Welcome to Creators Cafe. I'm your host, Jessica Payne. I'm a performer, performance coach, and multi-hyphenate creator. I'm going to be bringing you conversations with some of my favorite creators where we talk about the sublime and the specifics of the creative journey. So grab a drink, get cozy. Let's go. My guest, Jake Arky, is an actor, writer, and producer. As an actor, he recently appeared in the Bay Area production of Silent Sky, along with commercial and film projects. Jake is the co-founder of So Say We All, a nonprofit dedicated to educating and producing storytelling events, which has flourished in San Diego for almost 15 years and is now adding shows in LA and San Francisco. Jake is an award-winning writer whose incisive and funny and dark work has been published by SSWA Press. He is currently a producing partner with Tiny Titan, where he executive produced the short film The Waiting Room, and now he is starting his first feature as an executive producer from Femme Regard called Sync. Jake is my friend and a champion of artists, along with being a master collaborator. Please enjoy my conversation with Jake Arky. Jake Arky, welcome to Creators Cafe.
Thank you, Jessica Payne. Thanks for having me.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking a cold brew that's creamy with oat milk.
It is creamy with oat milk. Nice. I have an iced vanilla latte from our friends at Dialogue. Hello, hello. It's delicious.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so how do you think of yourself as a creator? What are all your titles and all the things that you love to do over the years?
All the titles and all the things I love to do. I think it amounts, as much as we can go with like a big multi-hyphenate, I'm going to stick within the parameters of actor, writer, and producer.
Okay,
Yes.
Those are the big three.
Those are the big three.
Yeah,
yes.
That's fair.
And I think everything else can kind of fall underneath those in little subcategories, subreddits, all of those things. But yeah, the big three, the holy trinity: actor, writer, producer.
Awesome. Let's talk in that order then.
Okay.
So actor, how are things going? It's a weird time in Hollywood where the strike just ended, and so it's just been a weird year.
Yes.
But we haven't ratified the new one, and so Hollywood's kind of in this morassy kind of middle ground. So yeah, just how are things for you as an actor? How's that going? What has been fun? You've done some cool things.
I've done a lot of cool things, and I've been really lucky to, because I'm not currently in the union. I believe I'm eligible to be in the union, but I haven't officially joined as a member. I was able to work on a couple of like small projects, like some commercials that were non-union, and a couple of other gigs. But the best thing was that this summer I got to be in a play and go back to the stage. I got to go back to the Bay Area and be part of this play, Silent Sky, that I had originally worked on 10 years ago when I was at TheaterWorks Silicon Valley, and I was their playwright in residence and part of their education department. And the cool part of that was that I sort of know the playwright, Lauren Gunderson, who's like one of the, if not the most produced playwright in the world right now, and watched her develop that at TheaterWorks. Elena Wright, who played Henrietta Leavitt, the main character of the show, back in 2013, came back to revive the role on stage, and so to be on stage with her and do that was amazing. And then Jennifer LeBlanc, who was in the original production, came back to direct this one, and so it was just a lot of fun to go and to actually be part of this show that I knew really well. But in many ways 10 years ago I couldn't have imagined myself being in it, let alone in it with a lot of the same, cast and working with the same artists. So getting to do that was amazing and like a big highlight for me.
That's so special. And
Yeah.
she's an amazing playwright, and it's it's a script about women in science.
Yes.
And it's a really cool topic that's not explored very much, and it's kind of been the hot play the past couple of years.
Very much so. And it feels really resonant to do it because about like, what do we deny in science? What are we ignoring? Whose voices are we marginalizing? Who are we pushing aside? And for me, it's been really awesome. I will say in the last couple of years, I've gone from playing like the sweet, like best friend who like, aw shucks, doesn't really work out for him, to playing like the problematic white males. And that has been really fun. And also I feel like I will happily take on those roles if the story can be about the people overcoming them or fighting them. I will happily take on like not the villainous role, but like the oppressor role.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because to tell that story, somebody needs to play that character
Yeah.
and play it well and kind of find a way into it.
Yeah.
What's your experience been in, I know you as someone who works really hard for social justice and like is walking a really beautiful walk of not being that person. So how do you get into that mindset? Do you have like acting techniques, or is it just like the empathy for the situation, or is it more that you just know you have to step into a character for people to have that to fight against? Where do you kind of come into that mindset wise?
That's interesting. I think, being a cishet straight white male and being raised in a society that champions all of those things right off the bat, I never felt comfortable in that world of like the guy's world, the dude's world. There's a reason I flock to theater and I flock to the arts, and there's a reason, that I tend to, while I have very good guy friends, it's a smaller number compared to the other types of friends or people or in groups that I go with. So I think there was always a part of me that felt on the outside of that, but I could look in and think about all of the toxic dynamics that happen between men, or watching in workplaces that I'd been in where things had kind of come down from a patriarchal sense and a colonial sense, and watched as all these people got hurt, and empathizing with not just the situation, but the groups and the individuals involved. So I feel like I know those characters because I think that the characters I've played have never thought that they were bad or thought that they were the wrong person in the situation. And watching so many people, and even myself at certain points in my life and my career, talk myself out of, oh, I'm not that bad of a person, or I didn't make a mistake, and not owning up to it. So I think diving back into it and knowing that there can be a sense of redemption for me, at least, in showing a person who's trying to do good and failing at every turn, and making that character as human and as empathetic as possible, while still knowing that they are entirely in the wrong. Yeah.
Like hitting the marks that you need to hit,
Yeah.
while having empathy for the character.
Yeah, I had a director for a short film give me a note that I thought was so great, where they leaned over and just said, he's a male feminist. And that is like, I instantly clicked into that, where it's like, oh, he thinks that he knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't at all. As opposed to like somebody who's like outwardly like abusive and aggressive. It's like, no, this is the guy who thinks he's good, but he's not.
Got it. That's really interesting, and like could be more pervasive and interesting in a nuanced way.
And more complex.
Oh, yeah.
I think it also, it grounds my performances, at least whenever I've done this. It's grounded it in a way where I know if I'm doing my job right, that people are upset with me. And that's been a really interesting reaction to have.
You're so likable.
Thank you. That's very nice. I try to be nice. I try to be, open and amenable to everybody and every situation as much as possible. But during Silent Sky opening night, I had a really interesting thing happen where somebody in the crowd in Act 2, where I am basically showing all my cards and showing that I'm not siding with the main character, and that in fact I am actively pressing her. Somebody stood up, put their thumb down, and went, boo! And I knew it wasn't like that they were saying that they hated me. And afterwards, we were saying hi to the crowd, and she came up and she's like, "Don't think I hated you. I just hated the person you were playing." And I was like, "That's great. That meant I'm doing the job well." Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah. Boo.
I get that kind of reaction, from like children's theater, but to have an adult reacting to a period piece like that is hilarious.
But that's the best thing,
yeah,
right?
They were actively moved.
Actively moved by it. And it was nice to get a response where I feel like, a lot of people could walk away and just kind of give you a look of like, I don't want to deal with it. But I'm glad that they actually expressed how they felt.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I originally met you, we were both working back at TheaterWorks, and one of the things that you're amazing at is both as a writer, but also kind of interacting with people, is drawing stories out. And your love of stories and your ability to work with someone and craft an amazing story. The way that I've seen you recently do that in LA is with your group So Say We All, which is a storytelling nonprofit that you started in San Diego years ago with a friend.
Yes.
And you've recently this year brought it to LA. So can you tell everybody about what So Say We All does and kind of how you work with storytellers, and if somebody's listening, how they could I'll have in the show notes about what it is and how they could find out about it, but just kind of what the process is if they want to check it out or get involved somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. So Say We All is my creative baby, and it was something that I truly never thought I would do, and I never thought I'd be a part of. Coming out of school in 2008, I had a degree in dramatic writing, and I really wanted to be a playwright. I left New York and moved to San Diego to work for the La Jolla Playhouse, and 2008 was not a great time to graduate. With a lot of student loans and a BFA in dramatic writing. So through the economic recession, I got laid off from the Playhouse, and I was still looking for something to do. So I randomly one 4th of July, my first 4th of July in San Diego, I met a man named Justin Hudnall, who we quickly became friends because we found out we had both been at NYU, same department. He graduated the year I got there, so we missed each other by months. And he introduced me to this idea of storytelling that was just starting to pick up. Podcasts were new, and they were starting to release The Moth, which is, this storytelling event where they put out a theme every single month. You put your name in the hat, you get 10 minutes if you're called up to tell that story on theme. And they're supposed to be true stories from your life. So we were looking around San Diego, and it didn't really have a lot going on in the literary scene at that point. And we had a writers group, and it was hard to kind of, as writers tend to do, to keep people on deadlines and keep them accountable. So we decided, well, what if we presented a show that was similar to The Moth, except we weren't going to time it, where there was going to be no judges, there was going to be no winners. We just want to give people a deadline and a theme to write a story from their life on it. And that show ended up being called Vamp, and the group ended up being called So Say We All. And that show has now been running for, that started in 2009, almost 15 years. And it's been absolutely incredible to watch people come up and tell their stories on stage. And we now have this multimedia element where they can pick pictures from their life or pictures from the internet to enhance the stories. And in the weeks leading up to the show, they have group critiques, they have one-on-one mentoring for writing and for performance. So we feel like people have the tools and the power to get up and tell their story in the best way possible. And it's not easy for everybody to do that. It's not always easy for me to do that. And I love writing and I love performing. But we want people to not just tell their stories, but know how to tell it well, and to, in many ways, have a document of the story going forward. And So Say We All has just been really instrumental in kind of working with different communities to get these stories out there. So we've, had partnerships with a lot of the veteran community down in San Diego, and there was a whole series we did with them. We worked with the unhoused population down there and in schools. And just this last year, we said, well, maybe there's a way that we can expand it and not necessarily franchise it, but try this different type of storytelling in other places. So we've done 5 shows in Los Angeles. We did 1 in the Bay Area. We're planning more shows for Los Angeles coming in 2024. And we just found out that we've been accepted to Sketchfest up in San Francisco.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So February 1st, we'll be part of the festival, which is really exciting to go back there and work with that community again. And I'm really excited to do a show that's all funny stories and really like comedy based. But the flagship show is down in San Diego, and Justin is the executive director of So Say We All, and Jennifer Corley is the program director. But there's been so many other people who've gotten involved over the years and who are still involved, who handle everything from tech to social media to coming on as producers of shows themselves. So we like to create a pipeline where you come to a show, you don't know what it is, it's a little hard to describe, but you see it instantly. And you're like, okay, great. Then you go to our website, www.sosayweallonline.com, little plug there. And you see what the themes are coming up. And you say, oh, I might have a story based around the theme of blood. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like a time that you bled or saw blood. It could be your bloodline or the idea of what courses through your veins. We try to say the theme is like a jumping off point. But you submit your story, you go through the workshopping process, you perform it on stage, you feel really great about that, and you feel like you know the people you're on stage with. From there, we'll probably ask you, hey, do you want to be on the reading committee so you can see other stories that are submitted and vote on what comes up next? Do you want to volunteer as a mentor and help people get ready for it? And then, do you want to produce a show? Do you want to be the one in charge of leading the call for submissions, running the workshops, working with the mentors, working with the storytellers, hosting the show when it comes time, so that it never is one person's story or organization? I'm lucky that I'm a co-founder and a producer with it, but I would never in my entire life say like, this is my company, because anybody can be part of it and anybody can really take a big hand in it. And I think that just helps to grow this idea of sharing stories, telling stories, and having that that sense of community lift you up, as opposed to we're all kind of on our own, just trying to make it on our own. We have a community now.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. I was really honored to get to come to your first show here in LA.
Yeah.
And, be able to see the differences of, I know some people that performed were professional writers, and some of them, it was very clearly their very first time doing anything like this. But even the people, there's the saying of like, speak the truth even when your voice shakes.
Yes.
And I just loved how you made an environment where people felt empowered to do that.
Yeah.
And there was a couple of them that their voice was shaking, but by a minute in, it wasn't. And they had relaxed, and they knew that they were confident in the story and the work that they had done to prepare. And you saw them physically relax and their shoulders go down and settle in and get that response from the audience. And there was chuckles, and then there was tears, and it was really just beautiful.
Yeah, I'm always surprised by the reactions to the stories, and my reactions to the stories in particular, because I think sometimes you work with the stories so close and then you see them on stage and you're like, oh, this is so funny in a new light, or it hits you in a different way. And So Say We All, I would say, is where I've done most of my vulnerable work. And last year in particular, I did 2 stories. One where I really had to work with my mentor a lot to not cry through it, because it was so emotional and so raw. I still cried through it, but not as much. And I was able to have the tools to feel comforted and to feel resilient through it. So it wasn't like I lost my place or the energy of it, but I just had a reaction that was normal to it. And then the other one I did, I was very nervous to tell it, and very nervous based on like the theme and how it was going to be received. And it's the only time I've sat in the crowd of a show, and the only time this happened, but my Apple Watch sent me an alert that was like, "Are you having a heart attack? It feels like your heart is racing." because
This is a cardiac event.
Yes, I was so nervous that my heart was beating so fast, but I did the story, and I think it went really well, and I knew it because somebody else who was performing that night, who was very gave a lot of constructive criticism, but was very much like, "This is what you need to hit." I came off stage, and they looked at me, and they just said, "Yes, landed the plane," and I knew that they meant it because I think they would have told me otherwise. They're brutally honest.
Okay, fair.
So it was something where I felt like, oh, I'm not necessarily in a like the safe space where like anything goes. I think like we do create a safe space, but you have to back up your words. This is your life. This is your story, and it's also been interesting to talk to people and say, like, it's okay if you don't want to share this part of it, or if you don't feel like you want to go there in necessarily talking about the facts, but we like to unpack the feeling of it. We like to unpack the emotional experience of it. So it's always trying to like work that fine line of like, we want these stories to be real and true and honest, but we don't want to push people past their limits to where they don't feel like they want to share it, and that's entirely fine too.
Yeah, that's interesting to get to work with people to find the line of how do you be vulnerable and open and choose a deep truth to say, but not drown in the truth and the emotionality. And, there's some things that, if you unpack it in therapy first, you might feel then equipped to talk about it. But if you are just looking at it for the first time in a storytelling space, it might reveal itself to be too much.
Yes.
And I know working with actors, I find that a lot of like, sometimes there's truths that are so powerful that they're too big for this moment.
Yeah.
And so it's about finding the thing that's the right size, that is true and is deep and moves you, but it's the right size for the occasion.
Yeah.
It's really cool and beautiful.
Yeah, and I think an ever-evolving process.
Yeah.
Like I've been doing this storytelling, not just with So Say We All, but several different groups for the last decade and a half, and it always changes of how do I approach this, and what am I actually saying and sharing here, and oh, maybe this is too much, and maybe I need to pull back, or maybe it's not enough, and go a little deeper. And I think that's always the interesting part at the end of the day, is what is shared and what is not shared. Yeah.
And I like that you have created a space where people feel free to talk about like life in all its varieties.
Yes.
And it's funny and it's sexy and it's like raw, and there's space for all of that back to back to back. And I just really appreciate that. I think you've created a beautiful thing and nurtured it.
Thank you.
And it feels beautiful.
It feels beautiful to me too. Yeah.
Okay, so something that you've always been good at and done to varying degrees, but you're really stepping into in a more extended way, is your role as a producer. So tell us about what you're working on now, what you're excited about, and what you like about producing.
I'll tell you, I'm very excited that this summer shot an independent feature with Femregard Productions. So Carolina Alvarez, who's one half of Femregard, who I'd worked on with 2 other short films and became a good friend. I got introduced to her producing partner and friend, Tessa Markle. And they, as we were meeting, they were planning to shoot this feature, Sync. And so they were looking for producers to come on board. And I like the story, and I like the team a lot, and I like the vision that they had. And I thought, oh, this might be an interesting project to jump aboard, because not only is it a project I like, but it's people I want to continue working with.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the process will be that, this all turns out well, and then we can work together in the future, and we kind of focus on each other's projects and lift each other up. So it was really exciting to meet Carolina and Tessa, and then come aboard as an executive producer. And I really like the aspect of getting people paid. I think people need to be paid, and they need to be paid what they're owed. Having done enough projects in my life for exposure, or for just some clout, or to get something out there, I think that there's a time and a place for that, and it's great. But if you're doing this professionally, you need to be compensated for it at the bare minimum of like what the standards are. So it was 2022, last year. I did my first executive producing on a short film called The Waiting Room, which is now making the festivals. And my friend Suhasini Krishnan, she wrote and directed it. It was her directorial debut. I had acted in her short film that she wrote called The Company We Keep, which is where I met Carolina. And what I saw that Suhasini goes by Sushi, because she's like, white people can't say Suhasini all the time. So I know her as Sushi. So if I'm saying Sushi, that's who I'm talking about.
Great.
She is such a great leader and a great person to create a vibe on a set. So what she talked about was that we weren't going to have assholes on set. And we were going to treat each other with respect and dignity, and nobody was going to throw a fit. Nobody was going to be a diva. And working on 2 movies with her, it was great to see what it could be, and great to see the environment. And when you're working with a cast and a crew that are willing to do that, you want to see them get paid, and get paid for what they do. So I went out and I got some money to help finish The Waiting Room. And then when Sync came about, I was like, I think I can go and raise money to make sure that everybody is paid, which was a big goal for FemRegard, to make sure that everybody was paid, and paid fairly. And I would say that I'm learning a lot about producing, in the sense of asking people for money and support, which is not something I'm used to. But I'm finding I'm pretty good at it.
That's great.
Yeah. And for me, it's the joy of saying, if you give me this money, I can give it to the people to make the thing that you want to see, and they can pay their rent, and they can have, a credit that is not just like, we gave you a meal and a credit. No, it's like, you got paid for this. And so that's where I'm kind of seeing my sights go, as like, I want to back projects where people are saying, oh, I'm not sure I have the money. I'm not sure how to go and get the money. Because on set, I feel like I more want to be an actor or a creative. And I definitely want to lend my insights and my thoughts to productions. But knowing that if I can get the money and get them financed, and they can come to life, that's a huge hurdle. And I think that's what stops a lot of people from being able to make their movie, or produce their play, or get something out there. And so that has been a real joy, and a real exciting new adventure that I'm still very new at, but learning along the way, and learning that I have not just the resources, but the community around me who will help support that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's such a direct way to support artists.
Yes.
When you are working and contributing, when the audience is contributing directly to a passion project, you are making someone make the thing they care about, helping someone make the thing that they care about the very most. So it's going to be the best.
Yes.
And it's you're directly paying for their rent and food.
Yes.
And like helping independent artists to thrive and make things. It's
Which is
so
amazing.
fantastic. Yeah.
It's the best feeling, because I will say, having worked the majority of my career in nonprofits, you get used to asking for money, but what I never quite got used to was like, well, how is it disseminated and how is it really used? You can break down the metrics, but if I say, oh, we need 10K to pay our editor and to make posters and to pay our VFX team and our sound team, that's like, you're giving me the money and it's going to them. It's not like, well, we've got the overhead and we've got to like figure out, plus there's all, we spent all this money on a gala and we need to recoup the expenses on that.
Yeah.
It's the direct thing where you should be paying artists, you should be paying anybody who's doing their job and doing it well, and you should be paying them whatever it should be beyond the bare minimum, but at least the bare minimum of what they're worth for the project and their time and talent. They're worth that. And I think the strike, if anything, showed everybody that like time and talent and energy go into this, and it looks fun, and it is fun a lot of the time, and it is our passion, and it is the thing we want to do. But if we're not getting paid, there's no way to do it.
Yeah, it has to be sustainable or it can't happen long term.
Indeed.
What do you find works the best for you so far in finding finance? Is it online financing programs and crowdfunding? Are you looking towards grants? Are you looking towards donors? What's the blend that you're finding for these kind of projects versus more traditional nonprofit financing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've found so far it's been a mixture of online campaigns, which can be a little tricky sometimes because there's a lot of work and a lot of the back end to set up. I will say that there's a lot to keep track of too when you want to thank the donors and you want to get them, the gifts and the things that like are, they're not the main thing that they're donating for, but you want to say thank you, and keeping track of all of that. That can be a little tough, but it can also be something you can do from home, which is great. This last year, I went and I did several in-person events where we would host like a very homemade meal and invite people to come, and we would do a pitch in person. So with the FemRegard team, we did one in April where we hosted a brunch and we made all the food and we had people come, and we had somebody who's a scientist come and talk about the sci-fi aspects of the film.
Cool.
So that people kind of knew what we were playing with within the movie, and then the pitch followed afterwards. So you get this kind of like fun little bonus thing. And then I hosted a barbecue with my friend Lauren Berman at her house up in Palo Alto, and we invited people over, and I made my famous smoked ribs and showed them a cut of an early project that we were working on at that point in time to get them excited for it, and then just asking if they could back and support it, not just as the project itself, but as the new venture for me as a producer, saying like, hey, not only do you want to support this film, but you're supporting me in that this is my first time out here doing that.
Yeah.
And I will say that I had a really great response to both of those events. And what was really great is seeing people who were maybe a few years ahead of me in the game, or who were entrepreneurs in their own right, say like, well, we've all been here at this point in time, and this is the way to pass it forward, or pay it forward, pass it along to the next generation of people who are striking out on their own and doing something. And that was great to have that in-person aspect of it.
Yeah. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Lauren. Love you.
She's so wonderful. Love you.
Love you. Love your family. Thank you.
Yeah. And I really appreciate people that see that need to encourage people who are, all of us, I think, there's always someone who's steps ahead of you, and there's someone that's maybe right behind you or a few steps behind you. And something that seems maybe small for where we are right now might give somebody a life-changing step up, step forward.
Absolutely.
Whether it's advice or a little bit of money or hosting the thing or connecting people with the resources.
Yeah.
And Lauren's such a beautiful model of that. And it's incredible to see how one person has touched lives of dozens or thousands, probably.
Absolutely.
If not more.
Thousands at this point.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think there's something interesting with this concept of, the science now is telling us that if you get money to a certain extent, you pay for your needs, but then giving it away and having experiences are two of the ways you can maximize your happiness. Your personal happiness is by giving money away, but especially to someone you can see the benefits of them having it. And so this is like such a life hack to just have micro donations even to things and projects and people that you care about. But the fact that you're combining it with an experience that they're going to have a wonderful time.
Yeah.
That's just so smart, because you're not trying to trick anybody.
No.
You're not trying to manipulate anybody. You're just trying to say let's have a wonderful time together.
Yeah.
And then share some resources as a community and make something we're proud of.
Yeah.
And that's so incredible.
And it's something too that I think it can be really daunting, and it's something that we talked about a lot this year for these fundraiser type things where it's like, should we get catering? No. Should we rent an event space? No.
Yeah.
I think that there's been the perception that you need to have all this glitz and glamour to bring in all this money, but it was always something that really irked me in the nonprofit world, that we'd spend all this money to rent out an event space and get people there in their, black ties and their beautiful dresses, and really give them something that they could get anywhere else. Very different though from meet the new voices in Hollywood, meet the independent scene, and try some of our ribs, try some of our smoked ham, try some of this cake that we made, and then you get to meet other people there. I had a friend of mine who is not just a dear friend, but a great supporter and an artist in his own right, who also comes from an anthropology background, and he came to the event and he helped to get donors there and bring people, but then he met people who were interested in what he's doing, so he also benefited just through a social connection there. And then your network grows, and then there's more support.
I love it whenever it can be kind of a self-sustaining system that benefits everybody in a win-win kind of way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's interesting how I think we all hunger for this deeper connection and more intimacy. And when you're invited to somebody's house post-COVID, I feel like it feels like an honor in a way that I took for granted in the past.
Absolutely.
And so, honestly, that's why I film here and not in a studio, is I want to invite people into my home.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really interesting and cool way, is to just make it so connected.
Yeah, because I think then people really do feel like they're part of the project.
And they are.
And they are.
And they are.
Really are.
Yeah.
But I know sometimes I've donated to things in the past, and I never... it's not that I need a thank you card or anything, but I don't feel like I know anybody associated with it or had an experience with it, but this ties it to it. So you have that experience and you have that emotional connection as well as any other connection you might form.
Yeah, brilliant. So what scares you on a regular basis? Big swing.
The world.
Okay. Oh yeah, fair.
I mean, as a creative, I will say that the thing that scares me the most is losing the humanity of what I'm creating by having it sucked away through tech. I think I always get a little nervous around tech in general. I'm never one to be in charge. Don't put me in charge of the camera or the lights or anything like that, because I can handle it up to a degree, but if something goes wrong, I can't fix it. But also, anytime that I do a project where it's so tech heavy, I sometimes feel like I can't bring the humanity to it. And that is something that I'm worried about as an artist going forward, is the reliance on tech, but then the overwhelming need for it, and other people seeing that they can use tech in replacement of you, the artist. I didn't do the AI, profile challenges because I didn't want to support, AI taking work away and using work from other artists just to create a cool Instagram post. And it's a big thing in the SAG contract and in the WGA contract of not having AI take over in ways that kind of seemed inevitable. And I really want to have a part of my creativity and my creative life be organic, where I'm not checking an email every 2 minutes and I'm not on a laptop for the majority of the day, but actually working face to face with other artists in an environment. That's what was so great about doing the play this summer, is that, with the play and with performing, you are it. That's what it is. And I know I can rely on myself for that. But as the older I get, the more I feel like my parents, where I'm like, I don't understand this tech, or I don't understand how to promote in this new way on social media, where it's like, I know the old way to do it. So I think I'm just worried about tech not only surpassing my capabilities and my knowledge, but also taking over all the fun parts of what it's like to be a human making art with other humans.
So you're leaning into the fun parts to claim those as your own.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. And what if you had a magic wand and you could do anything creatively, where would you spend the ratio of your time? Or is there one dream project?
I think what I'd like to do, if I could wave a magic wand, is create a creative space for artists. When I was in San Francisco, I was very lucky to be part of the Piano Fight community.
Me too. They're amazing.
They're amazing. And I saw them in their second iteration, which is when they took over 144 Taylor Street. And they created a space where there were 2 black box theaters, a cabaret space, full bar and restaurant. And then downstairs, they had a recording studio, they had rehearsal rooms, they had dressing rooms. And what was great about that space is that you could throw anything up, and it wasn't always good, it wasn't always polished, but it felt really real and authentic. So I'd like to replicate a space like that where there is a stage and people can come, and it's not a big stage, but it's one where you could do plays, you could have music, you could have a storytelling night or a poetry night, where you could give lectures, and also have a space where artists can incubate, where they can meet each other, where they can have a drink or a coffee and hang out, where they can record their podcast or they can edit their film, and so that there's a hive of sorts that are there, and that people know that they can come there for a variety of reasons and not be exclusionary about it either. I think Piano Fight was the place that I think a lot of artists in the Bay Area went to because they weren't getting cast at ACT or Berkeley Rep. I mean, some of them were for sure, but it was the place to go just to kind of be your artistic, creative self and be welcomed for who you were and what you were working on.
Yeah, and because of that, the work was really vibrant and raw and all over the place, but it was very alive.
Yeah.
In a way that not all art that maybe makes it to mainstream level audience base is going to be able to.
Yeah. And just a place to meet other artists. To
go, like an incubator.
Yeah. To go there and know that either you're seeing somebody's show, or you're working on somebody's show, or you're in the show that night, or you're just there to, grab a drink on your way to go meet up with other people. That cross section is so important. And I remember Fran Lebowitz talking about this, of like when you outlaw like smoking in bars and stuff, it's like, where are all the artists going to go to sit and connect with each other? And I don't think you necessarily need to bring back smoking, but I think you do need to create a non-corporatized space, and one that is without necessarily a definitive leadership making choices from the top down of like, we're the artistic director, this is like the committee, where people can go and just try stuff out and be around each other. And then if they need to take it somewhere else and develop it, that's great. But to celebrate that work too.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've talked to people recently about like the concept of this show is Creators Cafe, is to kind of do that. And how cool would it be to have that in real life, of a cafe where creators come? And so you are welcome to be my executive director as soon as we get the financing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah.
I'm sure the check's in the mail.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your creators challenge? Because I know you're so good with working with people to kind of help them get, just like you were talking about with this beautiful vision for an artistic space, to get whatever is going on inside of them out. So what challenge would you give my audience?
I would say this is something that I've been doing with students from when I've been a teaching artist, or when I've been in residency with schools or with juvenile programs, is to do a free write for 5 to 10 minutes, knowing it's going to be bad. Do the garbage rewrite, because I think it's really hard to sit in front of a blank space, whether that is your blinking cursor on your screen or in front of a tangible page of paper, and just to start to write or come up with a project. But if you give yourself 10 minutes and just say, I'm just going to write like everything that's on my mind in these 10 minutes. And if one sentence is great, awesome. If 10 sentences are great, awesome. If none of it is great, though, which is really what we should be going for in this rewrite, and this free write, is that you get all the junk out of your head, and it's kind of a meditative process where, from my own personal experience with meditation, it's not about quieting your thoughts. It's about seeing them for what they are and seeing how you're reacting to them in the space and in your mind. And so if you can put it all down on paper and say, all right, I've cleared my head. I've had the moment to put all the bad ideas down. Now I can really get started. That can be applicable to if you're starting to write a book, or if you're just kind of outlining your production schedule or something like that. Give yourself the time to be bad, to make the mistakes, to be reckless, to be crazy. And I think it opens up a lot more of those creative resources that are tapped in your brain, because you're not judging yourself, or at least not as hard as if you're gonna I'm sitting down, this is my time to write. I've given myself that I'm writing 10,000 words a day or 10 pages a day. It's like, why don't you give yourself 10 minutes to be really bad at it, and then see where it goes from there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes. Where's the best place for people to find you?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm at the Jarky. That's TheJarky. And then you'll find pretty much everything that I'm associated with from there.
Beautiful. Jake Arky, thank you so much. Cheers.
Thanks, Jessica Payne. Cheers.
Yes.
Delish.
Join the community and share your creative challenges on Instagram and Facebook at Creators Cafe by Kika Labs. And also check out my website, kikalabs.com, KIKALABS.com, to sign up for the mailing list so you always know when a new podcast is released, and to check out my coaching and digital courses to help you be a more confident and joyful creator.